Hello YouTube. Are you ready for the best slider replacement video in the world? Well, you have come to the right place if you are ready for that. Because it all started out when I was looking for that video and I could not find one. So you know what I thought? I was like, well, I never really got the exact answers I was looking for. And what better way to learn something than by just doing it? Years of practice leading up to this. I've done stucco, drywall, and a whole bunch of obscure modifications over the years. And I'm going to go through step by step how I did it. And you can see me. I have my electric jackhammer. The electric jackhammer is amazing. It's perfect for demoing out stucco. I didn't have it on the twist mode. I just had it on the vibrate jackhammer mode, and I had the flat head, and it has an adapter to where I can make it so that it doesn't twist. And then I end up taking the door out, and then I end up taking the frame screws out, and now I'm playing with the lath. The lath is the metal chicken wire embedded into the stucco. And I told myself when I cut open the stucco, I'm going to cut open the minimum amount possible. And that's because most people, they demo out like 1.5 feet around the slider when they're replacing it with something similar size. Why do you need to do that? Just do the minimum so that you don't have a whole bunch of stucco work. You don't have an additional $100 in stucco materials that you're doing. So obviously you need to get the old one out of there. You put those in the back of the truck so you can recycle them or bring them to the dump. Next, how do we take out this slider? We rip it out after you get the screws. There's always one or two scragglers is what I call them that are holding it in that you kind of have to figure out along the way. Next, you want to make sure the bottom is flat. And this was flat. That never happens. But whoever poured this foundation made it very flat on the top of the stem wall, which is fan-fiddly-tastic. Then once you have everything out, you want to make sure that the frame around it is only slightly bigger than your slider. I'd recommend about 1/2 inch. And you saw me take out that stud because I needed to open it up a little bit more. Luckily there was a stud and some shims, so I took out the stud and I removed the shims and I put back in the stud, and it ended up being perfect. In some situations you can only go so far knowing where the studs are behind the wall. You just have to open it up. This bottom portion, I had to demo out the stucco facade on top of the stem wall, or on the side of the stem wall, because the new slider had a flange on the bottom. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't cut off the flange, so I had to accommodate that by taking out this stucco here so that when I put in the new slider has the bottom flange that rests up on the stem wall and is aligned with the studs where the side flange is, and also the top flange where the header is. And so eventually you're going to need to start doing exact measurements of your opening. Now we cut it a little too close, so we decided to open up a little bit more, and then I wanted to keep the paper, and I'm using tape here to fold back the paper so that when we put the slider in, it fits like a glove. And that tape holds the paper back, so when I do put the slider in, we put in the slider, excuse me, this is a team effort, can't do this alone, and that thing is heavy, and probably I'd guess like 400 pounds fully loaded. And my point is we use the tape to hold the building paper back so that when it slides in, when we put it in, it doesn't get in the way, so that I can remove the tape and the paper can go on top of the flange after I'm done securing it. The corner didn't really go in right here, so I had to demo out a little bit of the weep screed, but then we made the fit nice and snug. And then I did leave the top piece of trim out, which is just a 2x4 out. I wanted to see how much room we actually had, and it turns out it was going to fit perfect with that top header, or I guess you could call it a shim, which is actually really just a 2x4. It's part of the frame. And I'm also putting in construction sealant all the way on the sides, bottom, top, and I did have to knock down the construction sealant on the sides so that when we slide it in, it doesn't get on the inside face of the slider, because that stuff is actually really hard to wipe off. So keep that in mind. And then also sliders, when you put them in, they're not completely plumb on the door side where the slider comes out. And so you want to make sure you get a big level, and a 6-footer in this case. We plumbed it out, and then it was a little out of whack, so we bent the vinyl into a perfectly plumb position, and then I used GRK cabinet screws. I actually learned that that's the best screw because they're super flat and they don't break the vinyl. A lot of contractors or young contractors tend to use like deck screws. You don't want to do that. They're called GRK cabinet screws. And once you get it in and you play with it and you make sure it's all plumb, I cut little slots so that I can put shims on the inside where I cut a little notch so that there's no flex in the frame when it closes. So everything feels nice and solid. So it can be slammed and it's not going to bend the vinyl because there's a space between the vinyl and the king stud. Without the shims, it would do that and probably crack the drywall on the inside. So make sure you put in the shims. Alan, I didn't know he did this, so decided to leave that in there. I don't know what kind of symbol he's putting up, like N, lowercase n for ninja. We call each other ninjas. What's up, my ninja? I guess it's a Southern California thing, huh? But anyways, you got lath going in. Lath is going to be holding in the stucco. You want to cover the slider because stucco will stain. And you're going to want to paint too. So we leave this on there, and the red tape is specifically designed for sealing and sticking to stucco, but it's sticking onto vinyl in this case, which is just fine. And then I can pack in the stucco or plaster around it. And I prefer the Rapid Set Eisenwall because it's nice to play with, it's very sticky, and it cures fast. And it has a high PSI, it's strong. And I screed off the excess so it's completely flush. The GoPro ends up dying right here, but you know, I was using the tool and Alan comes in not familiar with the plaster trowel, and he starts using his hand and halfway convinces me it's faster. But anyways, this is the final product, and I was really happy with the way it turned out. We did some texture. This is obviously before paint, so now we're going to paint it. I try adjusting that spigot because it was leaking on the bottom. It seems like 50% of all hoses at houses leak, and I didn't want it to get my drop cloth all wet. So I tried adjusting that, but it was the aluminum hose ring was so seized on there I wasn't about to break it and do a side detour. So we're dealing with the leak, put a bucket under it, go ahead and paint the rest of this. And stucco, new stucco especially, you want to make sure you use a purple roller so that it gets in all those little cracks. They're a little bit more expensive, but it saves you a ton of time and makes it so you don't go crazy because it's real nice and thick. It holds a lot of paint and it gets it in all the crevices. And you want to get a paint match, and big box retailers have the paint match capability, and I would recommend taking a sample and getting a paint match. Here I'm actually scoring the tape that I put on the frame, and yes, a little bit of tape is left in there between the stucco and the vinyl, but I found that this is actually great because once I take down the plastic, the stucco is super tight to the frame, and the vinyl itself stays clean. There's no paint on it, there's no stucco on it, and I'm from the mentality of clean as you go. It ends up saving you a lot of time. It can seem like it slows you down because the prep takes such a long time. It's like 80% of the work, and the actual doing of the work in some cases just goes by super quick. But what kills me is having to clean up or scrub drywall out of carpet or pressure wash stucco stains on concrete. So it's really important to clean as you go. So next we work on the inside. So the inside, the frame was basically almost butted against the inside drywall, but there was a little bit of a gap. So after spray foaming the inside, cutting off the excess, I was pre-filling between the drywall, which was 1/2 inch, and the vinyl slider. And I put tape on there so I didn't get drywall mud off the vinyl slider. Drywall mud comes off really easy from the slider, so it's not even a big deal if you get it on. But I want to cover up the track too. I'm not trying to clean up the inside of the track with drywall and stucco, so that's why we did the base really well. And then I went ahead and grabbed an inside corner and an outside corner, because in drywall, when you have transitions to doors, or in this case sliders, they have these metal trim pieces which will make your corners look perfect if you can tape and mud them on and skim coat it. It ends up being a super clean finish. So on the sides, I just used an outside corner on each side, and then for the top I had to use an outside corner and an inside corner. So I'm working on that top inside corner, and I'm about to put on the top outside corner. And the reason being is because the old slider, we had a little bit of a gap on the top, and unfortunately just the outside corner wasn't going to butt up against the slider, so I had to work with an extra 1/4 of an inch somehow, and so that's why I decided to put the inside corner, and it gives the inside corner and the outside corner some rigidity when you can overlap those a little bit, and there's a transition from inside to outside corner. So this is a closer up view of the corner, the outside corner drywall, and I'm taping it right now. And really, it can get frustrating. I'm using 40-minute mud after I was sampling with 20-minute mud, but it was so hot out and the water coming out of the tap was so hot, it was setting a little bit fast, so I switched over to 40-minute mud. It was coming out much cleaner, and you just need to get the general fill, and the corner kind of keeps everything smooth, and you can kind of screed it off in a straight line. And there's small little clinker hairs on the corners, but once it cures, you just take your finger and it wipes off to basically perfect. And the reason I like using this mud that sets so quick is you're able to transition to the other parts of the job. You want to make sure you use a light to make sure that you're skim coating your drywall really flush, and then also to check to see if you miss any spots while painting. And overall, it was a very fun job and pretty technical, and we're pretty proud of ourselves for getting it done in only 2 full business days. And that's because we do all the trades. Fortunately, we've had experience doing that. So again, I hope you learned something from this. Thank you for watching. You see Big Bertha and little Betsy getting loaded up. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe. Appreciate you watching. Take care.